Tucked away in a quiet room on the second level of the vast Musée du Louvre is one of the best-known masterpieces in Western art history. It's a painting that is featured in almost every introductory course on European art history. It's a painting about which a lot has been said, but no one really knows what it's about. In this episode, we're talking about Antoine Watteau's pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera. In 1717, the Flemish artist Antoine Watteau submitted this painting to the French Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture, making his membership official. But it seems that from the very beginning, this painting bewildered its viewers. The Academy's records show that instead of following the usual protocol of admitting Watteau's painting into one of 5 established categories of painting, for example, history painting or landscape, officers of the Academy created an entirely new category of painting just for this picture called Fête Galante. With this groundbreaking work, Watteau became the pioneer of the Fête Galante, meaning pictures that show well-dressed aristocrats flirting and having fun in the outdoors. In fact, that is what the figures in the pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera seem to be doing on a quick glance. We see on a grassy knoll shaded by trees several figures in fancy dresses mingling in polite company. All the figures are paired in heterosexual couples, and their bodies twist and turn in elegant poses for which Watteau was renowned. While the general theme of elegant people enjoying themselves outdoors is consistent with a genre that would soon make him a celebrated artist, one glaring feature of Pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera sets it apart from other Fêtes Galantes. The scene is taking place in a mythological setting, with chubby Petit with little wings flying in the air, nearly nude boatmen atop a fanciful gilded barge, and this landscape that blends autumnal colors with fresh greenery, misty water, a town far, far away, and snow-capped mountain peaks in the background. In contrast to other Fêtes Galantes paintings in which figures occupy believable settings rooted in reality, this place seems dreamy and otherworldly. Plus, rather than regular clothes, Watteau's figures are wearing pilgrims' capes and hats and holding the pilgrim staff, indicating that they're on a journey to somewhere. Indeed, the title tells us that this is the island of Cythera, a Greek island where the goddess of love, Venus, first landed after being born in the sea. So it seems that these pilgrims are visiting the island of love. But are they arriving in the island? Have they just stepped off the fancy boat? Or are they leaving the island? And although these painted figures are exhibiting graceful poses and gestures, their faces are pretty hard to read. What are they thinking or feeling? What exactly is happening in this picture? As I said, many historians and critics have taken a stab at this very question for over a century. But recently, the art historian Maréchalle offered her fresh take on this painting. She proposed that instead of focusing on what the figures may be doing, we pay attention to the dreamscape that surrounds them, to this island of love called Cythera. Celebrated as a mythical island sacred to Venus, Cythera was perceived since antiquity as a paradise with perfect climate and fertile land, most conducive to sensual love. It was envisioned specifically as a space for erotic escape. In fact, in the French language, the expression "to embark for Cythera" was a euphemism for having sexual intercourse. You can see the strong ties between this mythical island and erotic love between a woman and a man in this engraving, titled Pilgrims of the Island of Cythera. You see a man and a woman wearing pilgrims' outfits, looking with bedroom eyes at each other in the woods, with Cupid wearing a similar cape and holding a staff. The male pilgrim holds a gourd, and the woman a shell, which are both emblems of pilgrimage, but here used as not-so-subtle sexual symbols. They're loving their little pilgrimage to Cythera, as Cupid holds the torch, a symbol of erotic desire. The inscription brings home the point of the engraving, telling of the charming voyage to Cythera, where life is easy and sensual pleasures guaranteed. But in early modern European imagination, the island of love wasn't always depicted as a cheerful and happy place. Love itself was imagined as a complex terrain, full of pitfalls and detours leading to disastrous outcomes. This allegorical map, called the Map of Tenderness, literally depicts the domain of love in all its enchanting and disenchanting complexities. One of the most popular images to be published in the 17th century, this map was included in the first volume of the French author Madeleine de Scudéry's novel Clélie, which I mentioned in the previous episode on the Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte. The map shows the imaginary realm of tenderness and two male voyagers about to begin their journey to win the hearts of women. Two classically dressed ladies are giving them instructions on how to get to one of the three desirable destinations on this expedition. Tenderness upon inclination in the center, tenderness upon acknowledgement in the west, and tenderness upon esteem in the east. The entire terrain is divided in the middle by the river of inclination. The venturing pilgrims must choose their paths wisely to reach the three realms of tenderness. Starting from the town of New Friendship, you could go to Great Wit, Pretty Poem, Love Letter, all the way to Respect, Kindness, and finally to Tenderness upon Esteem. Alternately, you could take the western path and go to Kindness, Small Gifts, Diligence, and eventually to Constant Friendship for Tenderness upon Acknowledgement. And you can reach Tenderness upon Inclination by a detour from affection or exactitude. However, a wrong turn from New Friendship can lead to indiscretion, deceit, slander, malice, and eventually to the terrifying and lonely heights of pride. Likewise, negligence leads to inequality, half-heartedness, flightiness, oblivion, to the lake of indifference. Pushing the journey too far, one can easily end up on the Sea of Enmity to the west, where a ship is already sinking. And with an unchecked physical passion for something more than platonic love available in the realm of tenderness, you could head for the unknown lands in the north and drown in the dangerous sea with all its scary boulders. The Map of Tenderness was devised as a game for sophisticated ladies of high society called Les Précieuses, who would gather for intellectual and witty conversations. These ladies and their companions would discuss different scenarios of courtship based on the multiple pathways available in the map. And playing this game over and over again, its participants would imagine love as a repetitive process, sometimes ending with platonic affection between two people, and other times shipwrecked in the Sea of Enmity, drowned in the dangerous sea, or worse yet, simply forgotten in the lake of indifference. Yes, love is so sweet when it goes well, but when it goes wrong, it totally sucks. And in this engraving, you see the mischievous god of love, Cupid, spraying his arrows left and right, with people falling victim to his whim. Some lovers are on their way to happily consummating their love, but others are clearly destroying themselves in blinding passion. Some cheat and others are cheated, as this lady who feigns interest in her suitor slips a love note to a dark-skinned servant. Some are crushed by cold-hearted rejection. Some collapse in love sickness. Some engage in deadly duels and even hang themselves or throw themselves out the window in anguish. The poem below plainly states that in love, the one is happy, the other in despair, and the most fortunate are never content. With this idea of love as a complex, unpredictable terrain where even the most fortunate are never content, how does Watteau's pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera appear to you now? Watteau's pilgrims may have set sail to Cythera for a carefree, amorous escapade, but love seems to have different plans for them. Look at Venus in the far right, who appears as a garden statue. Although her worshippers have decorated her statue with roses and a bow and arrows to tap into her divine powers and love, she is depicted with her arms cut off and looking rather forlorn. On the other side of the composition is gilded Siren, affixed to the barge, another mythological figure who lures sailors with her enchanting songs and sinks them into the treacherous sea. With wounded Venus on the one side and the deceitful Siren on the other, things are not looking so great for these folks. The pilgrims are acting out the repetitive circuit of love. The three couples on the knoll can be seen as representing three different moments in the progress of love, moving from seated to standing positions from right to left. But instead of going down the hill to join the other pilgrims, the woman in the mustard yellow dress looks longingly back towards the couple on the far right, as if wanting to restart the cycle of love. Rather than emerging triumphant in their pursuit of amorous pleasure, these figures seem to be stuck in the island, never quite reaching the bliss promised by the island's rosy-colored myth. And here's a detail you don't want to miss. Next to the couple in the far right, with the man whispering into the young woman's ear, there's a little child, tugging at her skirt. He's sitting on top of a quiver of arrows, donning the pilgrim's cape and nude from waist down. Could this be Cupid, sitting on his weapon, reminding the woman that one of the consequences of giving in to this guy's seduction is an unwanted pregnancy? Is Cupid seated below a statue of his goddess mother, warning the young woman of the dangers of love? Unwanted pregnancy, promiscuity, losing oneself to the blinding passion of love had real and terrifying consequences for women in early modern France. Women who fell victim to love outside the context of marriage became social outcasts. Beginning in 1712, not long before Watteau painted his pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera, undesirable women were deported to an island, a real island called Ile Dauphine, off the coast of Louisiana, the vast French colony in North America. Once deported, these women were expected to contribute to increasing the French population in the North American colony, but they often faced the dangers of yellow fever, harsh climate, and attacks by Native Americans. In a painting that survives in an engraving, Watteau painted the scene of women departing for this other island. In this scene, you see a young woman with a swollen belly being greeted by a man in an exaggerated bow, being hurried off by her mother. A weeping prostitute escorted by a soldier who is likely her former client, and a distressed war woman being helped by a lawyer. Representing different forms of love's disenchantment, these ladies are being shipped off to the new world where unknown dangers await them. The scholar Maréchalle proposed a departure for the islands as a counterpart to the pilgrimage to the Isle of Cythera, showing a real island in contrast to the mythological island, showing real consequences of falling victim to love in the satirical tone, in contrast to the dreamy, mist-covered scene of love's ambiguities. Two pictures that show us complicated visions of the messy business we call love. That's it for this episode. As always, share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Art Story Lab.